can we do better to help you guys feel that you're not outcasts, that you haven't watched society just completely forget about you and move forward while you come home and you're trying to reacclimate back into real life? So what can we do better?
So when we look at the veteran population as a whole, there's about 18 million veterans in the United States. As a population, veterans are more than twice as likely to suffer with mental health challenges and struggle with addiction. And veterans are at a rate of somewhere between 22 to 44 a day, depending on the statistics that you look at, are taking their own life. So that tells me that there's a tremendous amount of pain and suffering that veterans are enduring. And that's what I share about in my TEDx talk, is looking at what creates that, what creates this hard, experience that veterans are facing.
Instead of focusing on winning arguments, we're teaching the basic fundamentals of sales and marketing and how we can use them to win in the world of politics, teaching you how to meet people where they're at on the issues they care about. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show.
Well, hey there, folks. Brian Nichols here on The Brian Nichols Show, and thank you for joining us on, of course, another fun-filled episode. I am, as always, your humble host, joining you from our lovely Cardio Miracle Studios here in sunny Eastern Indiana. The Brian Nichols Show is powered by our amazing friends over at AMP America. Folks, if you're looking for the news you need without all the corporate media bias and fluff, head over to ampamerica.com. We have podcasts, we have news articles, opinion pieces, and more. One more time, ampamerica.com. Also, the Brian Nichols Show, like I said, is powered by Cardio Miracle. They are, in fact, the best heart health supplement in the world. So if you have high blood pressure, high resting heart rates, if you have been sleeping terribly, or if your doctor just says, hey, buddy, you got to get that ticker figured out. What's going on there? Oh, stick around. We're going to talk more about Cardio Miracle and how it will help revolutionize your heart health game. Stick around. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But first, we're going to get into today's conversation. And with that, it's a very personal topic to yours truly. It's something I know that I've dealt with myself. I know hundreds of you out in the audience have reached out to me over the years talking about your issues with dealing with substance abuse, namely for today's conversation, alcohol. But one of the recurring themes that I kept seeing from folks reaching out to me here in the Brian Nichols Show was that a lot of you were vets. Not dogs and cats. No, vets, veterans who went overseas and fought for this country, and coming home and just feeling something's off, whether it's depression, anxiety, just not feeling that you can get acclimated back into normal society. I've heard it all. And with that, unfortunately, the folks I speak to who look for some type of substance to help numb that, to help make it feel like it's not so bad. And usually that turns into alcohol or worse. So to discuss all that and more for today's show, and specifically how it impacts our vets, joining us here on the show is Garret Biss. Now, Garret is joining us from Unspoken Trauma.vet. Garret, I'm so excited to have you here on the show because you're talking about this through the lens of someone who's experienced it firsthand as a veteran yourself. So, Garret, thank you for joining the show, and thank you for doing what you do. Do us a favor, introduce yourself here to the Brian Nichols Show audience and how this became a focus that you spent so much time, energy, and effort really focusing on going forward.
Yeah, Brian, thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to talk about this topic today and share a little bit about my own experience, what I've done, and most importantly, what I'm doing now and what I think we can all do to better help support not just veterans, but really everybody. I mean, we're all going through the same human experience, and there's certain obstacles and challenges that come up, and there's certain things that slow us down or deviate us from the path of life that we want to be on. And whether you're a veteran, whether you're a retiree, whether you had some major change in your life and now you're just not showing up and experiencing life the way that you want to, I think there's something that we can all learn from having conversations around that. So that's the biggest thing. And that's why I'm really excited to be here. And I'm grateful for you to invite me out here, because I think for all of us, getting to a better experience in our life or making a greater impact all comes from understanding, compassion, and most importantly, I think having conversations with other individuals that have been through similar things. Because at the end of the day, even though all of our lives are unique and things show up in unique ways in our lives, I think there's a lot more commonality to the struggles that we face and the desires and the dreams that we have, which we can learn when we have these conversations and reach out to other people.
Here. Now, one thing as I was doing some research into your approach, and I love this, is that you don't simply work with folks to get them over that proverbial hill, right? You work with folks to get them over that hill and then to keep going forward. And that right there, that speaks to why I really wanted to have you on the show, Garrett, because this is something that we as a society, we really got to get better at, is not just like accomplishing the hard thing, but keeping on after we've done that. Because, and I've seen this in my own personal life, right? Like you check off the box of whatever that thing is. You know, for in my case, I lost 185 pounds and I was like, all right, got life figured out.
Where did it go?
Right?
You lost it. I'm sorry about that, man.
Yeah, well, I know. I don't know where the 185 pounds went. It's missing somewhere. But no, when I lose all that weight and all of a sudden I'm thinking I got life figured out, and then you realize, oh, wait, life still is hard, even though I'm not a big fatty anymore. I'm not 385 pounds, and yet life still is challenging. There's still issues that I thought were going to get resolved by just getting skinnier, and it didn't happen. And then you start to say, well, what am I doing wrong? What happened? And then what do? You start to self-medicate. You start to maybe have that one extra drink at the end of the night that turns into a couple extra drinks that turns into, well, you know, if I start drinking at 5 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock somewhere too. Well, if I start drinking at noon, not everybody else is going to know. I mean, I'm working from home, whatever, right?
That's a big thing through COVID too, right? Like a lot of people walking around with their like teacups and coffee cups. Nobody knows what's in it. And I love your point there.
It's water. I swear, it's water.
Yeah, that's right. No, to your point there, you know, I had a mentor years ago and he pointed out, he said, there's a lot of tools and resources to help somebody get out of the gutter. What there isn't is the resources to help somebody continue that journey and climb up the mountain. And that's really what inspires me to do the work that I do, and some of the tools and resources that I provide with those I work with, or free resources I provide online. Speaking of which, I've got one for your audience. So remind me at the end and I'll share that. Because it's, you know, okay, so you've overcome this huge obstacle and challenge, but now what are you going to do with that? Like, what's the point of that? Because if we don't continue that work, if we don't continue to build up our self-esteem, our resolve, our resilience, regain that sense of meaning and purpose in our life to drive forward, then it's too much of a risk of another substance, another behavior, another numbing or coping mechanisms to sneak its way into our life and continue to create a situation or an experience that we don't want and that we want to get away from. So that's why I think it's really important. You know, if you take those first couple steps into whether somebody's struggled with addiction and they're taking their first couple steps into recovery, it's very important to continue that journey. I see a lot of people that they start that recovery journey. Maybe they find sobriety from whatever substance or behavior that they've struggled with, but then they create a life where they're just suffering against cravings and temptations. And it's like that's not what life is supposed to be about. We're not supposed to be white knuckling this thing till the end. It's let's create a life that we don't want to numb and escape from. I think that's the end goal, and that's the secret to continue that journey and why I do what I do.
Hey folks, I want to take a moment to talk about something that has truly changed my life, and that is Cardio Miracle, our incredible studio sponsor. Now, I'll be honest, when I first heard about Cardio Miracle and their claims about improving heart health, I was skeptical. But after using it for just about 2 months, I was absolutely blown away by the results. First, my blood pressure went from being consistently around 140/90 to a much more healthier and manageable 120/80. And my resting heart rate dropped from the low 70s to the high 50s. And I couldn't believe it. But the benefits didn't stop there. I started sleeping better, and I felt more energized at the gym, and my heart felt the best it's felt in years. And it's not just me. Hundreds of you, our amazing listeners, have reached out to share your own incredible experiences with Cardio Miracle. So, what is Cardio Miracle, and how does it work? It's a carefully crafted supplement that harnesses the power of nitric oxide to support optimal heart function. So by increasing nitric oxide levels in your blood, Cardio Miracle helps relax your blood vessels, improve circulation, and it protects your heart from damage. It's like giving your heart the support it needs to function at its best. And here's the best part. We've got an exclusive offer just for you, our loyal listeners here at the Brian Nichols Show. When you head over to cardiomiracle.com and use code TBNS at checkout, you'll get an extra 15% discount on your order. Plus, with their 100% money-back guarantee, you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. So, if you're ready to take control of your heart health and experience the life-changing benefits of Cardio Miracle for yourself, just click the link in the show notes or video description. Trust me, your heart will thank you. And don't wait another day to prioritize your health. Join the tens of thousands of folks who have already discovered the Cardio Miracle difference. Head to cardiomiracle.com now and use code TBNS for 15% off your order. Your journey to a happier and healthier heart starts today. And now, let's get back to the show. Let's create a life that we don't want to get numb and escape from. That right there, that is it. And I mean, Garrett, how many folks who come home from overseas, campaigns and such, like they just, and I've heard this far too often. This is why it hurts so much to hear. They don't feel they fit in. They feel that they get home and everything here just keeps going, but it's like they go overseas, they come back after their tour of duty, and it's like they're in a different time zone or different era. Something has changed, and they don't feel like they are integrated into society. So let's kind of go back and really understand, and let's talk about veterans in this part of the episode. What are some of the things I guess you guys face that we just don't realize, and help us understand when vets come home. What can we do better to help you guys feel that you're not outcasts, that you haven't watched society just completely forget about you and move forward while you come home and you're trying to reacclimate back into real life? So what can we do better?
Yeah, so I skipped over your first question. So I'm a Marine Corps veteran myself. I served from 99 until 2015, ultimately as a C-130 pilot. So the greatest job that anybody can have in the military. I'll argue that all day long. And what I've learned through my experience, and what I've been speaking a lot about, actually, my TEDx talk, it's hopefully out right now. If not, it'll drop very soon. What I look at is the transitional trauma that veterans experience. So when we look at the veteran population as a whole, there's about 18 million veterans in the United States. As a population, veterans are more than twice as likely to suffer with mental health challenges and struggle with addiction. And veterans are at a rate of somewhere between 22 to 44 a day, depending on the statistics that you look at, are taking their own life. So that tells me that there's a tremendous amount of pain and suffering that veterans are enduring. And that's what I share about in my TEDx talk, is looking at what creates that, that situation, or what creates this hard, this challenge, or this life experience that veterans are facing. Yes, there's certainly a lot of veterans that experience things in their service or experience things while forward deployed that create challenges, whether it's post-traumatic stress or just emotions that were bottled up that weren't properly processed or dealt with. So that's certainly true, and that leads to a lot of these statistics. But there's a lot of other veterans who continue to struggle or suffer after their transition because of these three fundamental basic human needs that we lose. So as humans, in order to thrive, in order to experience a fulfilling and a successful and joy-filled life, we have some basic needs. One of those is the need for connection. So we have a need for connection to other individuals in order to emotionally regulate, in order to have a sense of belonging, in order to have a sense of self-worth, in order to feel like we're making a contribution or know our place in the world. We have this sense of connection. We also have a need, with that connection, we have a need for authenticity. We have this need to be able to show up as we are, to say what we think, ask for what we need, and not fear that it's going to cost us the connections that we have. Lastly, we have a real strong need for a sense of meaning. Meaning is not only does meaning something that excites us and gives us direction, helps us move forward in our life and know the direction that we're moving, but meaning is also a capacity to endure suffering. When we have a strong sense of meaning in our life, we're able to do hard things. We're able to experience some setbacks and some challenges and obstacles, and we're able to overcome them because of the sense of meaning that we have. Well, if we look at a veteran that transitions from a life of service in the military, for many veterans like myself, I joined the Marine Corps when I was 18. So everything I knew about myself and about being an adult and being a member of society or a member of the world, the community, everything I knew was through the lens of being a veteran. When I retired from the Marine Corps in 2015, there was a very abrupt shift from that reality that I'd known, from that identity that I'd had, to this whole new world and this whole new identity. And it was trying to find my way through that and trying to reconcile the differences between this life that I came from and now the life that I was experiencing. That's what destroyed my foundation. That's what ruined, sent me in a tough direction, and sends a lot of veterans in really challenging directions. That loss of connection to the brotherhood and the sisterhood that I had in the service, that loss of understanding, knowing my identity. I knew myself as a Marine. I didn't know who this Garret Biss was. I had to go find that person. And then the sense of meaning that I lost, and very abruptly, all of those things create a very challenging situation for veterans to move beyond.
You said the word meaning. I was going to say the word purpose. Same church, different pew. If you
certainly
were to ask me, right? Because when you look at that idea of your sense of meaning, your sense of purpose, so I'm a new dad, and I've been saying this here in the show for the past year. As I've entered into fatherhood, it's like, if you're ever looking for whatever that, that calling is, your sense of purpose, your sense of self, have a kid, because you see it in your kid, right? Like, she's the one that keeps me doing what I do, doing all the hard things, trying to be the best version of myself. Now, that's not to say I'm perfect. I'm not perfect. I sin, I fail. I could not even begin to count the number of times I've sinned, not only in the eyes of man, but also in the eyes of God. And with that, that's something that I am constantly having to work on. But if I'm looking for my North Star, it's my daughter, right? It's my family. Right. It's that gives me that meaning, that purpose. And for the veterans, your purpose, your meaning is to protect this country. And that's what you go, and you're literally putting your lives on the line to do. And yet when you come home, there is, I'm going to just say, like, there's almost zero things that compare to what going and serving in the armed forces does. And, we're recording here a day after Memorial Day, or 2 days after Memorial Day, excuse me. And it really just speaks to not just like how important the role of veterans is, but just the ultimate sacrifice that comes with being someone who puts your life on the line to stand up for this country. And when you all of a sudden come home and that meaning, that purpose, like, it's still there. It doesn't go away. Like, that's still something you're passionate about, but there's no job that you can go to.
Right. There's a lot of people that enter the corporate workforce and they're like, what, it's just not filling me up the way that it did, or it's just, not providing.
Garrett, you're telling me that the corporate meetings with Bob to discuss the accounts from the Whitehall account, that's not exciting compared to being put overseas and trying to defend America's interests?
Yeah. That's right. Huh. Yeah. So, and when, with that strong sense of meaning, as we're in situations or environments, it can get really clear. So you talked about fatherhood. For one thing, our sense of meaning and purpose is going to change throughout our life. And that's okay. And that's normal. But I think it's when we get caught off guard that our sense of meaning has changed, and we're not able to kind of reconcile that abrupt change or the transition. That's when it creates a lot of issues. So, you talked about fatherhood, and one of the things that if something happens to a loved one, if you're dealing with an emergency, if your child has an emergency, you got to take them to the hospital, or there's something that needs to be solved, it's like I get such a sense of clarity, and it seems like everything else just kind of removes itself from the periphery, and I get very clear on what do I need to do in the next 10 minutes, the next hour, where is my focus right now? And when you have that, when you're forward deployed, when you're working with, in the military, whether you're conducting a training operation, there's this environment that you're in, and there's this thing this task before you, that it's really clear where your focus and where your attention needs to be. And what I've struggled with, and I know a lot of veterans struggle with, is after the military, it's kind of hard to figure out, there's not one shining star that's much, taking so much more of your attention, or it seems much more important than everything else. So it can be distracting. It can feel overwhelming, and it puts a situation where a lot of veterans just feel lost as they try to navigate their life in this new world, this new experience.
So let's go from the outlining the problems part of the show to identifying solutions, Garrett, because here in the Brian Nichols Show, we like to promote solutions, namely solutions that we can just start to bring to the table right now without having to go to Mr. and Mrs. Government and say, please help us. No, we say we're going to start doing things right now that need to be done, gosh darn it. So I know you focus specifically on providing tools and resources to veterans who are coming home and they're trying to find some type of help to help reacclimate, or at the very least figure out what the heck's going on up here. So with that being said, Garrett, give us some of those tools, give us some of those resources. And frankly, for the folks out there who are listening today, and maybe they're finding themselves identifying very much with this persona that we've created here today on the show, what would be some words of advice to them?
Yeah, so 3 things really. One is trying to regain that sense of connection. So if we're in a situation or experience, there's been an abrupt change in our life, and we feel like we've lost that sense of connection, maybe you retired, maybe you just moved, maybe you entered a new workforce, being the friend or being that sense of connection that we want to experience from other people is a tremendously powerful way to start to create some of those sense of connection. I always say, if you want somebody who's going to be there with you in good and bad times, if you want somebody who's going to be a true friend, who's going to show up for you, then demonstrate your willingness to do that for others. I think it was Zig Ziglar that said, if you go out in the world seeking friends, you won't find them anywhere. If you go out in the world trying to be a friend, you'll find them in abundance. So that's a great thing to remember. If we feel like we're disconnected, if we feel like we don't have that social circle or those connections that we want, go out and try to be that connection, provide that for somebody else. So that's certainly the first thing. The next thing is when we lose that sense of meaning in our life, it can be hard to find what's the next thing that can fulfill that sense of meaning. One of the things that I like to encourage people to do is follow the emotion of joy. Joy is a very powerful emotion. It can be a guiding star in our life. And what I found is when we engage in the things where we feel the sense of joy the most, this usually leads us towards where we'll find the greatest sense of meaning and purpose in our life. There's a reason that we enjoy it. There's a reason that, we get lost or swept away in the time, or we really feel like we're in the zone. So whatever that is for you, use that as a key to, go investigate and find ways that you can bring some more of that into your life. Maybe it's with a profession. Maybe you're lucky because you get to do, you get to monetize the thing that brings the most joy into your life. Maybe it's not that. Maybe it's a hobby, or maybe it's another passion or something that you engage, that you pursue outside of work or in your spare time. Lastly is, and this ties back to how we started this conversation around addiction or around alcohol, is find ways that you can be responsible for creating what you want to experience in your life. And I think when I see people that struggle with addiction, when they really start to struggle, it's because they've become reliant on something external to their body to create or synthesize some kind of internal feeling. Maybe it's a pain that they're trying to avoid. Maybe it's a void that they're trying to fill, but they're relying on something that's external to them to create this sensation. I think of recovery as the opposite of that. Recovery to me is finding everything that we need inside of us to create the situation and the experience that we want. So if you find yourself pointing the finger or trying to identify things that are external to you, whether it's the environment, your community, the government, this new law, this new regulation, these are all things that are external to you. Find the answers inside of yourself. And I think that's the pathway to a recovery, to much more greater happiness and joy in your life and experiencing a much more fulfilling existence.
Garrett, the TEDx is called the Unspoken Trauma All Veterans Face. Now, as we're recording here today, a peek behind the curtain, the TEDx has not launched yet. However, very, very shortly, it will be going live. So with that being said, we want folks to obviously please support all the great work that Garrett's doing, but also we want you guys to go check out this TEDx. So Garrett, for the folks out there who want to go ahead, catch that talk you did, give us some details there. Where can folks go ahead and catch it? Do they have to spend money? All that fun stuff.
So you can send Brian Nichols unmarked bills in a plastic bag. No, you can go and you can check it out for free. You can go to unspokentrauma.vet, and that's where the TEDx will be when it goes live. And knock on wood, hopefully it's live right now when you're listening to this. But one of the we talked about having conversations and having that understanding, that compassion. So one of the things I really intended with this TEDx talk was to explain my understanding and the experience that veterans face, but also to help other people who love veterans, who work with veterans, to better understand the suffering and the challenges that veterans face so that they can better support those veterans that they love. One way to do that is to check out the TEDx talk, but I want to help use this as a catalyst to creating more conversations, not just around the veteran struggles, but how many of us struggle at times in our life and some of the obstacles that we face. So one invitation that I have is, if you watch the talk and you enjoy it and you want to share it with others, I invite you to host a watch party. And there's an opportunity to do that on the website, unspokentrauma.vet. And what we can do is bring a group of individuals together, do it on a Zoom room, do it on a phone call, and we can experience the TEDx talk and then talk about whatever it brings up for us, so that we can, I think there's a lot of healing that happens when we can share and when we can speak openly and talk about what we're going through. We gain insights and we gain clarity and we feel the support. So there's a great opportunity there to do that. And then before I forget, so I want to mention this free resource that I had. One of the products that I sell with my coaching, which I want to offer to your audience for free, is called the Warrior Reset. Now, whether you're a veteran and you consider yourself a warrior, or you're just an individual going through life and fighting the battles as best you can consider yourself a warrior for this. But the Warrior Reset is just a quick 10-day program that you can go through, and it provides 4 simple activities that you can do each day. It takes no more than 15 minutes to do all of them. But it's a great emotional, physiological, spiritual kind of reset to help you get back to that version of your best self, reset your central nervous system, calm yourself, help fuel some more positive mindset so that you can deal with the challenges that life presents. So very quick, very effective way to do that. And if for anybody that's interested, you can go to thewarriorreset.com and get free access to that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Garrett. And by the way, we're going to include that link in the show notes. So it's super easy for folks to find. All you got to do, go down below. If you're watching us on the video version of the show, just click that link in the show description. Or if you're listening to us on the podcast version of the show, just head to your podcast catcher notes and it'll be right there in the notes. This is great. And Garrett, I'll wrap things up in my end with this. And we have to be willing to talk about the things that are uncomfortable to talk about. Like I have been very vocal on social media, specifically my personal pages, talking about my battle with substance abuse, namely my battle with alcohol. And for about 3 years now, actually this summer will be 3 years, I haven't had a sip of alcohol. And it's been one of the best choices I ever made. But with that, I know that if I were to just simply tell Brian from 5-10 years ago that, well, this is where you're going to be, I would have laughed at myself in the face, because to see where I was to where I am today, I couldn't draw the map out. I couldn't figure out how I'm going from destination A to destination Z. So I think one of the hardest parts is knowing that there is hope, first of all, but also that there are people out there who, just like you, have either gone through what you are currently going through or are currently going through what you are going through. So don't feel, and this is my main words of advice for the audience today, don't feel you have to battle this alone. You're not alone. There are people out there like yours truly, like Garrett, like your friends, like your family, who will be there to help support you, whether you're a veteran returning from your overseas tours of service, or if you're, just as Garrett mentioned, just an average everyday, Mr. or Mrs. John Q citizen going out and facing the battles we all have to face every single day. We all are going through something, but don't feel that you have to go through that something alone. And if you do feel that way, at the very least, please don't feel that you need to partake in some type of substance to help numb whatever it is that you're feeling. There are people there who will support you, but also people who will help you become the best version of yourself, not just overcoming that proverbial hill, but yes, going far beyond the hill and maybe climb up a few mountains along the way. That's my final thoughts for today, Garrett. As we wrap things up, what do you have for us on your end, and where can folks, again, go ahead, support you and the great work you're doing over there at unspokentrauma.vet?
Yeah, thank you, Brian, so much for sharing that. And it reminds me of the famous saying that your sickness is in your secrets. So for those people that are struggling with something, just share it with somebody else. Maybe share it with yourself. If there's nobody that you trust to share it with, share it with yourself by writing it down, writing it in a journal, just to get it out there so that some healing and some clarity and some forward movement can take place. And Brian, thank you so much for being open about your struggles, because it gives the next person permission to face some things in their life and to take those positive steps. So I really appreciate that and this whole conversation. For anybody that wants to find me, you can find me on social media. You can go to my website, garretbiss.com, which I've provided. You can also put that in the show notes, unspokentrauma.vet. So you can watch my TEDx talk, talking about the transitional trauma that all veterans experience. And then finally, if you want a free gift, you can go to thewarriorreset.com and you can experience the Warrior Reset for yourself.
Fantastic stuff, Garrett. And by the way, you know what, folks? I'm going to do something I've never done before. Well, I haven't done in a while. And that is a completely non-paid for sponsor post. And that is, I want you guys, if you haven't had the chance yet, check out my conversation with our good buddies from the White Flag Project. What they are doing is they're creating, so we've all heard the commercials for BetterHelp, right? They literally do a commercial like every podcast, it seems, or YouTube video. So these guys are BetterHelp, but better. They're better than BetterHelp. And the reason they are is because instead of being given, your information to some random psychiatrist out there, you are actually working with people in your peer group who are putting themselves out there as a resource that have gone through things that you have gone through. It's completely peer-to-peer, completely anonymous. So if there are things, and by the way, right, there are things I'm sure I've had to deal with, Garrett, you've had to deal with, John, who's listening, Susie, who's listening, you guys have all had to deal with stuff that I guarantee if I were to give you a microphone right now and say, tell the world, you'd be like, I'm good. I'm going to hold off. But you know what? On White Flag, you can go ahead and in fact tell somebody what's been bothering you. Because to your point, Garrett, right, it becomes the poison. You have to get it out of your system, and to know that you can talk about it completely, without the the social vision in on what it is you're talking about, or to feel that you're going to be judged. No, there are people out there who are willing to help. So White Flag app, please go ahead. I'm actually going to include that link in the show notes as well. And if you stick around on the video version of the show, you're going to see right about like somewhere in this general area, a video pop up. That's going to be my conversation with the CEO and founder of the White Flag app, as well as our good buddy, Spike Cohen, who is a big investor over there as well. So please go ahead, check that episode out. But for all the work that Garrett's doing, again, folks, this is exactly why I wanted to have Garrett on the show, because if we don't talk about this stuff, then more and more folks who are suffering are going to be suffering in silence. So it requires us who have gone through some of the darkness to share where we found the light, and it showed that there is a path. So if you got some value from today's episode, which I know all of you out there, you did in some way, shape, or form, please do us a favor. Go ahead, share today's episode. When you do, please tag yours truly on your favorite social media apps on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, wherever it may be. Find me at B Nichols Liberty. As for the main version of the show and the podcast, you can find us on wherever it is you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or for the video version, YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. We're uploading the video versions of the show in their entirety over there. And other than that, just one final plug: please support the folks who support us. And that is our amazing sponsors like Cardio Miracle, our phenomenal studio sponsor, the Wellness Company. We have Ebel's CBD. Plus, we have our good friends, as I mentioned, over at the White Flag app. Completely non-paid for sponsorship, but they're just incredible people. So I want to go ahead and give them some love. Garrett, it has been an absolute pleasure having you here on the show. Any final words or final thoughts for the audience before we wrap things up today?
Brian, thank you so much. I'll just say that no matter what you've gone through, no matter what you've experienced or what you've done in your life, you're still a lovable human being just as you are, and you deserve to know that. And if that means that you need to reach out and find help in order to remember that yourself, then please do that.
Hear that, Mom? I'm still lovable. Ha! Just kidding. No, with that being said, thank you, Garrett, for joining us here on the show. And again, folks, please go ahead, give this episode a share. We really appreciate all the love and support you give us, because yes, we here at the Brian Nichols Show are in fact lovable. So with that being said, it's Brian Nichols signing off here on the Brian Nichols Show for Garret Biss. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Brian Nichols Show. Find more episodes at briannicholsshow.com.